right, welcome back to the podcast. This is Jimmy Rex, and today I have a special guest. This is Sean Reyes, the Attorney General for the state of Utah. So,
Jimmy.
Sean, it is such a pleasure to have you here. I guess it was about 2-3 weeks ago, Sean had the honor of hosting, Tony Robbins was doing an event here, and we gave you gave Tony Robbins an award.
On behalf of the state.
On behalf of the state of Utah. Tell us a little bit about that. That was awesome. Sean, and then we'll get into your story, but I want to start with that. How did that all come about with Tony?
Well, Tony came on an operation with us to Haiti, undercover, to bust up a child sex trafficking ring. You know that because you've been on operations with us too.
Absolutely.
You're one of our most successful operatives. I don't know what that says about...
It says I have a special, unique skill set where I'm okay dying, I'm just not okay not living. And so, like, to go do something like that...
Amen. What better thing could you do than be out liberating little girls and boys from child sex trafficking around the world? And I might as well take an opportunity right here for your viewers, because I will tell anybody who will listen, 40 to 50 million modern day slaves around the world. And it's people like Jimmy Rex and Tony Robbins who put their lives on the line and their resources behind helping support organizations that go out and fight this atrocity, this epidemic.
You've been at the forefront of that here as the Attorney General of Utah.
Something that we're passionate
about.
What
caused, because you more than any other politician that I know of really took to that. What was the leading value that you possessed that caused you to want to go about that?
I've always been about trying to protect people who can't protect themselves.
That's great.
Something that my father taught me. My father's an immigrant who came from another country. His uncle was the president of the Philippines, and yet after time a dictator rose to power and was hurting people, and my dad had a great life there, and instead of just keeping his mouth shut and living with his big homes and all of his success, Jimmy, he was the personal artist for the Pope. He had painted paintings in the Vatican for the Pope. He had gone on tour with Bob Hope, who, the young generation has no idea who that is. But, he was like the Justin Bieber of the back in the day. They sang all over because he sounded so much like Elvis Presley. He had been had his own TV show, his own radio show, all of this success, but he couldn't stand seeing people get hurt, and he spoke out against the regime, and they tried to kill him several times. Wow. And so his aunt, the former first lady, literally put him on a plane one night and said, "Buddy, they're going to kill you. So we need to get you out of the Philippines." And she sent him to LA. He knew nobody there. He had like $5, and he went from that to living homeless to painting paintings for dog food and apples or whatever he could get. But in all of that, it was always about trying to help stand up and protect people. And so I think inherently, I grew up with that example, and human trafficking, whatever it is, however we can protect those.
I've actually noticed that with you, because I've met several politicians, and I'll be honest, I've always kind of felt little compared to them, like in the room, and you were the opposite of that. And I've had so many friends that have met you as well that have commented to me like, "Dude, that guy was so down to earth. I felt like he got to our level to really speak to us." And I think that kind of speaks about a little bit of kind of how you go about your whole how you are with everybody. So is that kind of...
First of all, you never feel little with anybody.
I feel little right now because you're a college athlete.
You're Jimmy Rex, and you were so successful, and it's an honor to be here with you. I don't even know how I got on, because supposedly you're interviewing all the ballers, all the hitters, but I think some of it's just the circumstances. I grew up in a poor area. Dad had to struggle. Mom was a school teacher, and they taught me from a young age that everyone is as important as anybody else.
No, that's great.
That you can learn from anyone. Don't dismiss the older generation. Our
well,
seniors.
I've always said you can tell how somebody really is by how they treat people that are, I guess, seen
that other people
below
would say,
them, or people that have nothing to gain from. And so that's one of the reasons I think I've gravitated towards you a little bit as a friend and everything else. In fact, the whole Tony thing, I was so sad I couldn't go on that operation. I was the same weekend as the Super Bowl, and my friend Kyle was playing, and so I got to go to that. But
we missed you on that operation, but it was wildly successful. More than 30 little girls from 5 sex trafficking rings, and Tony was blown away. He's like, "This is the coolest thing. This is Anthony Robbins,
who's done everything.
Who's done everything."
Yeah.
And he said, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, and I want to continue to dedicate my time and resources. And that's one of a number of different issues that we've been focused on. But let me share with you a story, because I think this is important. You asked me sort of what drives me, what principles that we live by.
Yeah.
And when I came into the office of Attorney General, it's now almost 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Things were a little in disarray. There were.
Yeah, you came in a kind of an emergency situation, right?
Yeah, and they were tough. A lot of unpleasantness that had preceded me. One of the things that I did was interview as many people as I could at the higher levels of management, all the way down to the janitors. And when I started talking to the janitors in Spanish, fortunately I'm part Latino, so I spoke to them in Spanish. I said, what do you do? And they said, we didn't steal anything. That was their response to me in Spanish. We didn't take anything. Please don't, get us in trouble. And I said, why would you say that? Like, well, that's the only time anybody has ever talked to us. They didn't even know who I was.
Sure.
I said, come on in my office. I want to show you. I said, to me, you all are part of my team, and you're just as important as any lawyer, paralegal. You do something. And what is it that you do again? They said, well, we sweep and we dust. And I said, but do you like it? And they said, yeah. They said, we can actually make more money doing that here in this country than we can being professionals in our own country.
Sure.
And we can send money home and support our families. And I said, here's something that I learned from Reverend Martin Luther King, hero of mine. And he has a speech that he gives about being a street sweeper. And in that he says, if it falls to your lot to be a street sweeper, in other words, something that society deems to be very low and menial and not important, he said, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures, sweep streets like Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. In other words, it really doesn't matter what you do in life, but do it with passion and with caring and love. And I told them, look, if you do that with whatever it is that you do, it'll rub off. It'll help me create an environment in this office where people will want to come, will feel like a family, and will get a lot accomplished. And so one of the guiding principles is treat everybody as if they're the most important.
That's beautiful. Well, and it's empowering too. When you treat people that way, they will do anything for you, right? They'll run through a wall for you when they know that you sincerely care about who they are.
And I've seen you do that with your team. I think that's why you guys are so successful.
My real estate team, it's funny, I have an experience. I do my big fireworks show every 4th of July. Yeah. And one year, some ashes from the fireworks fell on some cars. And there was a guy that met me earlier in the night. He was a loan officer, which in the real estate world, the loan officer is doing anything he can to win over the top realtors, right? And he came up to me and he gave me his card and he pitched me on how great he is. Well, he ends up yelling at one of my assistants about these ashes on his car, and they got his license plate, and I found out who it was later. I mean, just berated him. And I called him up and said, hey, it's Jimmy Rex, the next day. And he's like, oh, so glad you called. I said, dude, you treated my assistant like this. And I explained it. He goes, well, I didn't know that was your assistant. I said, dude, you just told me everything I need to know. And so it's a good principle, it's like really try to treat every single person. You never know, and you shouldn't need to know who they are. They could be completely nobody, but at the same time, that person, to them, you just became maybe the guiding person in their entire life by the way
every person matters. They all have their story that you
can
learn from. That's one of the problems
please.
That we have. I was going to mention this because it's another passion that I have. It's helping teens, because we have the #1 rate of teen suicide in the United States. It's the #1 cause of death for Utahns ages 10 through 17. And a lot of that is because they just don't feel like people care, or there's anybody who cares enough. But yeah, that's something that we're passionate about and that we want to educate.
Well, and it shows for sure. And speaking of stories, I kind of want to tell your story a little bit. I want you to tell your story because it's pretty cool how you ended up here in Utah. How did you end up the Attorney General? Like what was growing up like, and how did you end up here? Give us a quick little.
Well,
get to know Sean
Reyes was awesome. I have an incredible family, incredibly diverse family, and I think that's one of the things that really sort of helped form my life and my character. First of all, again, my dad comes from the Philippines. He's half Spanish and half Filipino, and he brings a rich tradition from that country. My mom is from the Big Island of Hawaii.
Okay.
And she's half Japanese, half Native Hawaiian.
Wow.
Her ancestry back to King Kamehameha the First, a proud lineage on the Japanese side, back to the Maeda clans, these Bushido clans. So great, rich history. None of that really mattered when I was growing up because I was born in Westchester, which is right by LAX.
Okay.
If you've ever been there, there are lots of neighborhoods where you don't want to stay.
You get the cab from LAX, you get as far away as quickly as possible.
There's an iconic little restaurant with a donut, Randy's Donuts, right there.
Sure.
I grew up a couple of blocks away from there. And it was tough because mom and dad, again, were just trying to get established. When you're an immigrant Filipino guy who's got no connections, you're hustling to just make ends meet. And my mom, again, was a public school teacher. She was a public school educator her whole life and such a great example to me about public service. But we had very little, but tons of love, tons of encouragement. And with that kind of diversity, dad's Catholic, mom's Mormon.
You must have had a blast.
We had family that was Buddhist and family that was Hindu, and foods and music and culture. It was awesome. We moved from an area that was very diverse in Westchester out to another diverse neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
I moved right in Encino, Tarzana, Woodland Hills, Canoga Park, and all of a sudden I had all these Jewish friends that would invite me to Hebrew school, bar mitzvahs, and I was like, wow, another, learning.
What a blessing to be exposed to all of that at such a young age, right?
My parents taught me that, even though my father was a devout Catholic, my mother was a committed Mormon, in every religion, in every culture, there are great truths. There are things that you should learn from. You must respect everyone's perspective and view. That doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It doesn't mean you have to adopt it for your own, but certainly at a baseline, show that respect.
It's great advice. And I think as I've gotten older, is anytime you get to a place where you understand somebody, it's always you're going to love that person, but it's when we don't understand or we're scared of what we don't know, right? And so to have that exposure, I encourage everybody. I to this day, I stop by random churches all the time. I don't go to any one church. I just go and I visit and I try to get to know different people from all backgrounds,
Yeah, it can be at a mosque, it can be at a synagogue. It doesn't even have to be in a building, right? You can go out in nature and feel that connection.
So how'd you end up back here in Utah then? Because you grew up in California for part of and then you grew up in Hawaii, I think. But how'd you end up here in Utah, and why did Utah become your home?
I spent the school year in LA, and then summers working with my grandparents on their farm. And I'm not trying to make a bad joke, but seriously, I felt like it was human trafficking working for my grandparents, like child slave labor, because they're rural farm folks, and there's no messing around. It's early morning, you work all day. And so that was an interesting dichotomy growing up. But how I came out here, I had some scholarship offers to play different sports at different schools, and I had fixated on BYU. My mom had graduated from BYU, and I'd heard these tales of all these gorgeous girls in this town called Provo, and I thought, wow, that sounds really cool. If I can play ball and and meet some cute young ladies.
I heard the same tale when I got down to
and so I went there with the understanding that I was going to play volleyball for BYU. They changed coaches. The new coach didn't really have a need or great need for me, so I played a little bit for a couple minutes on the scout team, enough to get some. Did
you actually get a uniform, or were you
not even a real uniform? I got the intercollegiate,
the intramural uniform.
Yeah, there's the athletic issue,
yeah,
so that I look like an athlete.
Kicked out of the locker room,
right. But BYU really was transformational in many ways. I mean, much less diverse than what I was used to.
That's what they say.
But I was able to explore a lot of interesting things there, and then served for 2 years in LDS mission, came back and taught in the Missionary Training Center, and sent missionaries around the world, and then went back to law school in California at Berkeley. So imagine going from Provo to Berkeley.
You really have had like the most diverse background, I think, of any person I've ever met. And I think there's like, hopefully you guys are, as your listener watch this, are picking up on that, like the ability to surround yourself with different ideas and different people, and how that can help shape your character and have that empathy for all people as you come across them.
I hope so. I hope that we not only internal as a family, and that I do it personally, but for my organization that we do that. But yeah, that's how I got here.
Okay.
And
so you went to Berkeley, and then did you want to become? I mean, did you always want to get into politics? Were you thinking about becoming?
Absolutely
and
not.
By the way, you're I think the first minority here in Utah. Correct me.
No, that's true. I've heard. That's true. I was one of the first to make partner at a major law firm.
Okay.
I don't know, one of the first 5 or 6. There were very few. And then as far as statewide elected officials, it was an honor to represent all of the minority communities who have long felt like they haven't had a voice, and become the first elected official in the history of the state of Utah. Wow. And I always would tell people when I was campaigning, that's not why I want you to vote for me. I want you to vote because I think I'm the most qualified, I have the most to offer. But if you do vote for that, then you're going to get a diverse package.
Well, and you're giving voice to people that maybe have felt like they haven't had one before, and so I think it's important.
And not just racially or culturally or religiously. I'm talking about other things too. I love to go to Comic-Con. You know that.
Well, I'll be honest. Even with me, it was the first time I ever donated to a campaign and voted. I've done one or the other, but it was the first time because I actually related to you. You came to an event I threw, the Black Tie Gala, a couple of years ago. I remember that. And next thing I know, you're talking to every single person. I left and 100 people were like, "Yeah, dude, my friend, the Attorney General is," it's like.
One of the things that I hope about politics, because I think people are very jaded about politics, and justifiably so.
Sure.
Because too many politicians in politics. You've heard me say this, but I think politics and politicians are selfish. They're always asking what's in it for me. I try to be a public servant, which is the opposite in my mind, which is what can I do to serve people. But I think people are jaded because they don't feel like people are authentic enough. So I hope, and it pleases me that you said that we can make an impact and reach out to the normal person and say, you can be involved in politics.
How does a normal person get to the point where they can help, people that are listening? What is something, as one of the top politicians here in Utah, what's something that you'd like to see more from the state? What are people?
One, just register to vote, right? And then actually vote. If you don't vote, you're giving up. I mean, people have fought and died for this right, and over years, women have struggled through the suffrage movement to get this great benefit and right, and then far too many people are just like, you know what? I don't know enough about the issue, and I get it. We're very busy with our businesses, our families, and our lives. But if you just let politics happen, then guess what?
You get the wrong people.
There's a lot of stuff that you may not want to see, but if you're not participating, so just that alone, and then trying to educate yourself, support good people that you know.
Well, that's a good one. I think educate yourself. One thing I do every presidential cycle, I take the top 6 or 7 potential candidates and I'll read their book. They all put a book out, right? I figure, hey, I'm going to get to know each one. And then at least if somebody doesn't like who I voted for, I can at least explain why I voted for them over everybody else. So I think that's something that I do. Pivoting, what do you do to stay sharp? What does a day look like for you? What time are you getting up? For people listening, I think people underestimate, I see how busy you are, but I think people underestimate how much goes into. So what do you do to stay so sharp? And what does a typical day for the Attorney General look like in Utah?
We work a lot of, I would say on average, 80-hour weeks.
I believe that from what I've seen.
When it's really intense, like during the legislative session, easily 90, 100-hour weeks. But part of that, I've always felt a need to give everything 110%. And certainly there's work-life balance, and to me, my family is the most important. And people say, well, how can you say that if you're working that many hours? Because when I am with them, we try to make it quality time, coach the kids. In fact, one of the reasons why right after this,
about to wrap up because you're going to coach your son.
You got to go finish coaching. Take them on trips. Make sure that you spend quality times, that you emotionally connect, not just listen and go to events and travel. But that is my, centering point. And my wife is amazing. I couldn't do any of it without having a partner who was, we've talked about this. I'm a charter member of the Married Up Club because she's so much better than I am. But then that's, the principle of hard work. No one owes you anything. You've got to go out. I want to prove to the people of Utah that every second that they give me, that I'm going to be trying to make use of that time, and not just to win and do things successfully, but to do it the right way. That's our other mantra. is
do it the right way.
win the right way. I would rather lose an election, a lawsuit, a case, doing it the right way than to win doing it the wrong way. But I'd much rather win doing it the right way, right?
Well, we were playing a board game a couple weeks ago with my nephew, and it's kind of that lesson. He cheated to win. And I looked at him, and I just said, dude, I don't want to play if you're going to cheat. I said, you rob yourself of the feeling of knowing that you won fair and square, of doing it the right way. And I think the lesson hit home, but I think that's such a powerful lesson to give there, you know, that, and it's like you said, you got to earn everything. You got to go out and, you know, you don't deserve anything, because there's such a feeling of power. Well, I'm saying when you do it yourself, the opposite of the entitlement feeling. Right. When you do it yourself, that power that you get, that confidence, and that is everything to me. And that's the whole reason why it's so important to do it the right way. And I always say, you know, anything in life worth doing, whatever it is, like you said with the mopping story, is worth doing right? Anything worth doing is worth doing right. So, well, on behalf of all of Utah, we appreciate you. And
thank you. Well, let me just throw in a plug, because you're ending on that note. You know, guys like you who didn't start out with a silver spoon in their mouth, who have worked their way up, provided lots of opportunities for others along the way, and not only been financially successful, but have used their success to turn around and bless the lives of other people, like what you do with Operation Underground Railroad. To me, that's really what the measure of a successful person is. That's why we bonded so much, because I see that in everything that you do. So thanks, Jimmy Rex, for letting me be here, brother.
We appreciate you.